Hello and welcome to ET Auto Facebook Live. This special live series is very special because we have somebody who has been in industry for a long time, and he has been looking at the transition and transforming his company, as well as trying to bring in new technology to meet the EV challenges also. And he has seen the downturn also very closely, and he has seen the disruption. So he's going to answer all those key pointers in the industry that is making buzz. Welcome to ET Auto Facebook Live, Sanjay. Really nice to have you. You have been working on EV space also, and the first question that I got from the audience on Facebook is that how do you see the disruption with EV coming up? How do you see the policy implementation, or how do you see the government support in this direction?
So, the government has talked a lot about EV in the recent past. This morning, in fact, there's been a little bit of a slowdown in the EV policy, only because of the downturn that's occurring in the industry. Of course, the low-hanging fruits are the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers, and I feel that going into the EV space in two-wheeler and three-wheeler industry will be much quicker than the passenger car. The other low-hanging fruit is really fleets. So what we'll see is what we are seeing even in the West is buses. We're seeing, of course, the two-wheel industry as well as fleets in the passenger car, and then eventually it'll come to pass car. So I think it's inevitable that we will go electric. I wouldn't put a date on it at this point in time. However, I think it's an evolution, and I don't think 100% will go electric. They will happen gradually. However, electrification is bound to happen.
So let me ask the first question that should have been ideal, because looking at the automotive industry, which is certainly going through crisis when it comes to job cuts, when it comes to production cut that has been heavily around the industry. You have seen Tata Motors having block closure, Maruti Suzuki observing closure, and other component makers also. How do you assess this situation? Do you see it is going to be serious further, or you think there is a road to recovery in the coming?
So, I think there'll be a short-term recovery, especially pre-buying of BS6, and this again is a very short-term sort of measure. However, there is a slowdown in the automotive industry, there's no doubt. There's been a lot of inventories at the dealer end. This morning you would have seen the news that the July numbers were better than the June numbers. However, yes, they're not meeting last year's numbers. The CV industry is going through a massive slowdown. This is a result also of freight companies, and it's a vicious cycle. I think that I wouldn't be able to predict when the industry will revive. However, I'm hopeful that it will come around. I think we've had 10 years of growth. We've had great growth in the past, and it's a cyclical industry. This is the first time that it's been this long, definitely, and this is also a unique situation because all the segments, which is farm equipment, off-highway, commercial vehicle, and pass car have dropped. However, we see hope in the industry just because of the fact that the numbers will go back up. They are cleaning the system. We have a lot of hope in the government announcing some incentives, because the industry has been talking to them, other industries have been talking to them, so we hope something will come out of it.
So those who have just joined in, I'm joined by Mr. Sunjay Kapur, CEO of Sona Group. He is answering all the questions. If you have questions regarding how to handle the slowdown, how to deal with the disruption, how can you be part of the transitioning automobile industry. Sanjay, just first question from the audience that has come up. How can you take, or an auto component makers can take some measures which can help them in dealing with the slowdown in short to long term?
So I feel this is a great time to bring efficiencies into the business. I think this is a time that auto component players as well as automotive players, and I think every business must really look at what they have in-house and how they can build a more efficient business. We've been through a downturn before in 2008, 2009, 2010, around that time, and this is exactly what we did. We looked at how we can build a more efficient business. I think people should take advantage of this time. Definitely, it's also time to prepare for the good good times. I always say that in good times prepare for bad times. So we've been sort of aware of the fact that this could happen because our business is cyclical, and the companies that are prepared for it, will be able to ride through the wave.
So another question coming from Vijay Raj. He wants to understand. Generally, people pass the buck to government when it comes to adopting new technology or transitioning to new technology. How do you think industry can independently? What are the major steps that industry can take to adopt to hybrid or EV space?
So the industry is adopting, to new technologies. If you look at technologies that we've built in-house ourselves, we built an electric axle. Again, it wasn't a demand that drove this. It was something that we felt we should provide to the market. So what's happening today is industry is giving solutions to the end customer as opposed to customers requiring those solutions first. Of course, there's a fine mix and a fine line between regulations and consumer requirement, and it all comes together. Sometimes regulation pushes things, sometimes customer requirements push things, and sometimes innovation from within the organization that allows a customer to understand what is available in the market.
Another viewer, Jayant Shinde, he wants to understand what is the main hurdles of EV implementation. A, strategy. To B, government support. C, policies and policymakers, technology availability, products availability, capacities. What is, according to you, the major challenge?
So I think the major challenge, which has sort of not been asked here, is infrastructure. I think it's building an ecosystem for the EV, which is going to be the major challenge. So when you look at EV, it's not just the electric vehicle, but it's the ecosystem around it, and building the right infrastructure, building the charging infrastructure. These are going to be the big challenges. So I think government wants to push EV. You've seen it. We've read about it. There's a lot of, I don't know if government should mandate regulation. However, regulation in terms of emissions is fine, and government will mandate emission regulations. However, it's really the infrastructure that's built around the EV and the ecosystem, like I said, that will help support electric vehicles.
If we talk about the overall automotive or auto component industry specifically, MSMEs are the worst hit. What is your message to them? How can they deal with this slowdown, and how tier ones like yourself can assist them or are available to assist them?
So I think, like I said, this is a great opportunity. Whenever there's a crisis, you should use it as an opportunity to build a more efficient business, to build a better business. Is something that we all focus on. We're here to support our suppliers as well in our current business. Especially in the forging business, our only suppliers, steel suppliers and machining suppliers. However, in the past, when we've run assembly shops, we've had multiple suppliers, and we've sort of supported them in terms of, in whatever they needed at that point in time, like our customers support us. It's one big ecosystem, and we realize that today the market is slow, tomorrow it will pick up, and when it picks up, we need the same support. And we need
another viewer, Ravikant Singh, he asks whether push to electrification has also added to the problem that the automotive industry is facing right now.
I'm not certain it has. I feel it may be a question in the buyer's mind. So from that aspect, buyers may be holding back a decision. Should they buy EV? Should they not buy EV? In terms of electrification, and I've continuously said this, the industry is ready for electrification in terms of OEMs and auto component manufacturers. If you look at it globally, whilst in Germany, most people are not in favor of battery electric just because the German driver is not very in favor of battery electric. However, the OEMs have the platforms ready. It's really a matter of whether the buyer will buy them. So from a buyer's perspective, it could often be, should I buy EV, should I not, should I wait or not? And this may have added a little bit.
So India is one of the largest exporter of engine component, and engine component also plays a very important role in overall business of auto component space. With electrification, how do you see these auto component manufacturer transforming themselves or trying to find a new opportunity for them to survive or do business?
So I don't feel that it'll go to 100% EV. I think there will be hybrid, there will be ICE, so the engine will not die. So it's a myth that the engine will go away, and I don't think the engine manufacturers really have that much to worry about in terms of the engine going away entirely. I think there will be a percentage of vehicles that will go EV, and it'll be very small to begin with and then slowly grow. However, the engine manufacturers will also grow in terms of ICE, in terms of hybrid, etc.
Looking at your order books, what kind of impact in terms of sales or production you see from BS6? This is being asked by Mr. Sanjay Kene.
So, from a BS6 perspective, we don't really change the component. It's really engine related. So, from our perspective, we're not seeing any major impact other than the sales impact. So, we're hoping that, pre-buying happens, in the next couple of months, which uplifts the industry and then goes on to BS.
If you talk about overall industry, the industry which has already invested heavily, about 70,000 crore on BS6, do you think the industry has appetite to shell out similar kind of investment for EV or electrification? Do you think government should take a bit of pause before we move to complete electrification, or we talk about 100% electrification of fleet?
So again, I think electrification is very dependent on the ecosystem, and I don't think it's just the electrification of vehicles. It's infrastructure building. So unless we're completely ready to put in that money, you're right. If the government and industry together wants to make that kind of investment, and it is a big investment, it's a large investment, and therefore I feel that the electric vehicle growth in the passenger car business especially will happen much slower than what will happen in two-wheeler and three-wheeler.
Coming back to component industry, this is probably for the first time we have seen component makers have announced, block closure or shutdowns at their plants. Have you seen this kind of trend in the past, and what were the road to recovery, and if you look at the current situation, do you think it is going to worsen for the component space also, and what kind of job loss do you assess in the long to short term?
Yeah, so I think if the industry continues like this, if there is more shutdowns, it will definitely affect the component industry. It will definitely affect jobs, and that is again a cycle of killing a consumer. So again, it's a vicious cycle. With regard to shutdowns, component industry does shut down whenever the OEM shut down, so it's not unique. We've seen it before. Even when you're having a good, healthy year, you need to shut down for maintenance anyway. Because companies like ours that are running an overcapacity, this is a great opportunity for us to relook at our maintenance plans, etc. Because we haven't been able to shut down in factory in the last 10 years. We've been running, overcapacity and continuously adding capacity. So
I agree that factories have to shut down, but that shutdown happens for a limited period. You look at the biggies like Maruti, Tata, and they all are announcing continuous shutdowns. It's not one or two. There has been several shutdowns. That's certainly not normal, that I would like to say. Secondly, if you talk about the demand shortfall, it has gone into a strong double digit of 25%, 30%. When did you see this kind of decline last?
We've never seen this kind of decline, and definitely if there isn't intervention, this can become much bigger. The problem can only worsen. We're hoping that the government intervenes. We're hoping that GST rates are brought down for automotive. We're hoping that banks lend money. So I think again, it's the whole ecosystem, the whole economic ecosystem that really needs to fuel this industry and fuel the growth. And if this doesn't happen, it can cause a lot of problems and a lot of sort of heartache in terms of shutdowns, in terms of job losses, etc., which is again, like I said, a vicious cycle. You kill the consumer. So something has to happen. Yes, this is probably the worst slowdown we've seen in the automotive.
So we have only few minutes left, so you can post your questions in the comment section. Sanjay is candidly taking all those questions. So I have next question from Manmohit Chadda. He asks, what are the basic factors hitting this recession? What government needs to do in long term and short term for this situation?
So I think it's a liquidity crisis, definitely. And it started probably at the dealer end, where the dealer was piling up with the inventory, resulted in OEMs reducing production, resulted in the component manufacturers, and then it's again, like I said, it's a cycle. And I've said this, the government needs to look at GST. We need to look how we can bring GST down, if not temporarily, if not the long term, at least temporarily. We need to look at how banks can bring liquidity into their system, how banks can start lending money, and refuel the whole system.
Don't you think the technology demand, because we are moving to a very high precision technology, India doesn't have that kind of capability. If you talk about the Indian manufacturer, local manufacturer, yeah, Indian auto component manufacturer will have to once again rely on their foreign partners. Most of them are already paying huge, royalty for the technologies that they borrow. So don't you think it's a wrong time for the recession to come and to jump to a technology which is so so high class, which we did not have? We don't have even suppliers for those kind of electric vehicles and hybrids. So how do you see?
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, technology has been developed in India. Yes, there are a lot of companies that have joint venture partners, but a lot of people have learnt the technology, whilst the joint, and I'll take our own example. When we had a joint venture partner with Mitsubishi in the forging business, we eventually bought them out because we learnt the technology and we sort of became experts at the technology. Today, we control 12% of the global market because we own the technology and because we've been able to develop the technology. The technology we have in Germany in our plants is exactly the same as the technology we have in India. So I wouldn't say that we're lacking or we're lagging behind in technology adoption and development of technology. So even with hybrids, even with electric vehicles, if we don't have the technology, we will learn it. It's a matter of royalty is not that is not an obstacle that would sort of stop us from learning technology. Don't forget also Suzuki's manufacturing cars here that are being exported, Hyundai's manufacturing cars here that are being exported. So we're manufacturing cars for the global market. So if we're doing that, it means that we're at par with anybody else globally.
No, we are now, fourth largest passenger vehicle manufacturers. We have outpaced Germany, of course, but we are still, when it comes to technology, high precision technology, we import largely them, or we have built to print. The Indian industry was not very keen on investing on R&D. We have less than 1% expenditure on R&D. In such a scenario, as the industry is changing and going to adopt higher technology, do you see a sense of more focus towards R&D in India?
So I think in electricals specifically, there is a lot of import. I think other than that, a lot of it is localized. A. B. I see a lot of companies which are not just built to print, and this really started from the days of the Scorpio. Mahindra was the first company that gave Indian companies an opportunity to build from black box design. I mean, again, I take my own example. We do right from black box design. We're not a build to print company. We were a build to print company when we started our manufacturing days back in the late 80s. Mid 90s, in the 2000s, we were developed technology. Today, I find that a lot of companies have developed technology. A lot of companies invest in R&D more than than they were. And yes, there is opportunity to invest more. And again, the government needs to sort of also fuel this whole investment. And I think really when you look at where you're coming from a tier 2 and tier 3 perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunity to invest in R&D. There's a lot of help that they need in terms of building R&D capabilities, because at the end of the day, when you go to that volume, your tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers have to support you, and that could become the bottleneck if they don't invest really.
This questions come from my side. Looking at the economic crisis that is there, why do you think industry was not able to alert or identify this coming up? Because there has been some factor that was indicating a slowdown in the offing.
So I think, we had a great growth for the last 10 years. And when you're on a growth path, you believe that is going to continue. In terms of indicators, I think the first indicators came when we saw the crisis with the NBFCs, when we saw the financial crunch, etc. And we've been watching that. To be honest with you, this is a similar situation has happened in Europe. Whilst the component manufacturers may not have seen that as soon as the OEM saw it, and sort of gave out the warning, and then it takes a little bit of time to sort of adapt to that situation. So I don't think anyone expected the downturn to be this long, to be honest with you, because we've seen a downturn in 2009, and 3, 4, 5 months it lasted, and we were back up to normal, especially in India because we're so isolated. I think there is a lot of factors today globally. I think we're negating the fact, or really not giving emphasis to the fact that China has its own issues with the US and the trade war. I think Chinese volumes have dropped drastically. US volumes are dropping slowly. Europe, of course, is also going through what they call a technical slowdown of 2 negative growth quarters. So it's a global effect.
So it is seen that during this slowdown, there's a huge opportunity for M&A, merger and acquisition. What is your suggestion to the people who are open in the market and they're looking for some acquisitions or mergers?
I think it's a great opportunity. If we find an opportunity to make an acquisition, we definitely will, even in this market, because I have a lot of faith in the automotive business, and I feel whilst we're in a downturn today, and like I said, we're in a down cycle, this cycle will turn, and when it turns, we should be ready for production. We should be ready for what comes next.
You have made acquisitions in the past, Sona, BLW, that's how it became. It was a quite interesting journey with BLW. You went up, down, you dealt with crisis and everything. What are the few words of caution that you would like to give out to your counterparts?
So if I were to do it all over again, I would still go ahead and do it. However, what I would look at is, the asset we bought was rather large. I would suggest to people, if they're going to make an acquisition, make an acquisition of a size that you can really adapt to. And for us, going forward, we'd look at acquisitions in India. India is a market that we understand. In India, we speak the language, which is English, is the language of business, etc. In a foreign market, there's always, some impediment or the other. There's a cultural issue, as you said. There's a language issue if you don't have a partner, etc. However, fortunately, we've been able to turn the business around in Europe, and we're, grateful that we did that acquisition today in hindsight. However, going forward, I'd definitely say look out for a acquisition of a size that you can manage. Management bandwidth is very, very important. You must have management bandwidth, and I would say, if you get an opportunity to buy, not buy a distressed asset, don't buy a distressed asset.
We have heard that a lot of small component companies, because we see the component makers mostly are MSMEs. We heard that there will be probably many of them who will have to shutter down. Do you have some kind of assessment on that situation also?
I think there will be consolidation. In times like this, consolidation happens. So I wouldn't say shut down, but I'd say coming together. Building a larger platform, building a larger business from several other smaller businesses. That could be an opportunity, and that's what people should look at if they come to that stage. If businesses in the tier 3 or the tier 2 segment come to a stage where they feel they need to sort of shut down, I'd rather look at consolidation, because the business requirement will turn.
Do you have any facts or any assessment of that?
Not currently.
Okay. Do you think that April 2020 will be a time where you will see green shoots in the industry? If you can prophesy something of that sort.
Well, I'm hoping it will. I'm hoping it will. However, again, I can't predict this. To be very honest with you, no one's been able to put a finger on it and predict exactly when it'll turn around. We're all in the hope that it will. Earlier it was once the elections happen, we'll turn around. Now it's Diwali. It's pre-buying of BS6, etc. So we're hoping that things will turn around, and all we can do is sort of hope that it does turn around in April.
So we have talked about the recession, depression. Let's talk about the positive aspect of the market right now. We have seen a lot of opportunities are coming up with new technology coming up, new sort of mobility solutions coming up. What would be your advice to the young entrepreneurs or those who are small business owners in this space? What kind of opportunity they can explore? Which are the area they should look into if they want to expand or grow big?
I feel that disruptive technologies, where when you look at what ran the automotive industry before and what runs it now today, we have a saying called CASE, which is connectivity, autonomous, shared mobility, and electrification. So these are the four aspects of CASE. I think this is a great opportunity. Whether you look in connectivity, where there's a whole bunch of telematics and other opportunities that people can look at. Whether you look in autonomous, which eventually will come globally, will come much sooner than it will come in India. If you look at Daimler, they're looking at level 4 automation in the next few years. With regard to shared mobility, again, services is a big opportunity. If entrepreneurs want to look at disruption in the service space, that's a big opportunity. You're seeing it in the scooter space. You're seeing it if you look at countries around the world, more people are moving away from driving and using two-wheelers or electric two-wheelers or electric scooters as mobility. So mobility engulfs a lot of different solutions, and then you've got electrification, which we already talked about.
So we have left only few minutes with Sanjay. If you have any questions, query, please put it in the comment section. So one or two last questions, Sanjay. I would like to understand from you, looking at, you talked about case situation. There's one more very important thing that we need to notice when we especially go back to situations like this, when we have recessions. Indian manpower, which is still considered, if we talk about holistically in terms of productivity, they are not that great. So how much the industry should invest in terms of training their skilled manpower or enhancing their skill?
So I believe that's another great opportunity for an entrepreneur to look at skilling, because I believe not just from a case perspective of connectivity, autonomous, shared, and electrification, but Industry 4.0. As we look at manufacturing, the landscape of manufacturing is changing. We're looking at a different kind of manufacturing altogether, and for that different kind of manufacturing, you need a different skill set. So whilst the notion is that when we go to automation, you'll require less people, I don't think that's a fact. The fact is you'll require a different kind of person, and when I say different kind of person, I mean a different kind of trained individual, which is a different training solution. So that again is a great opportunity for a small business entrepreneur to look at training facilities.
So reskilling is another great opportunity for the people to go in. One last comment for the your counterparts and the viewers who are part of this industry: how to deal with this slowdown and what are the way ahead?
I think what I do is I look at the opportunities that this presents. This presents a great opportunity for us to clean up the business, to make a business more efficient, and just have hope because the automotive industry is here to stay.
So that's all from today's Facebook Live. We'll be live with another industry stalwarts very soon. Thank you so much for watching IT Auto Facebook Live. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for being with us. Thank you so much.